What's the weirdest thing you've done while your brain was on autopilot? I ordered a meat-long football from Subway. I then got upset when the dude had no idea what I wanted. Then we both laughed. What size sub? Meat-long. I spent ages cooking dinner only to pick the plate up and empty it straight into the bin. I was so tired and hungry I cried. I was making breakfast one early morning and cracked my eggs straight into the garbage. Poured orange juice instead of milk into my cereal, put the bowl of cereal into the fridge and walked back to the table with nothing, wondering where I put my cereal. I've tried to put milk in the cabinet where the cereal goes a bunch of times. I've even tried to put the box of cereal in the fridge. I put the cereal in the fridge a couple of weeks ago and my roommate has decided that's its new home. Every time, he moves it back. Pulled into my complex, walked up the stairs, my keys wouldn't open the door, and then I realized it had been 7 years since I had lived there. This is why you lock your doors. Spooky. I'm just glad nobody was home and I wasn't greeted by a Smith & Wesson. I drove a city bus in college. My route and my commute home had a road that overlapped. Driving home from work one night, I ended up doing my bus route instead of my commute home, and didn't realize it until I ended up at the bus terminal at the end of the line. I guess it was better than driving into my apartment complex with the city bus. Meeting my brother-in-laws for the first time. They asked me what my name was. I said Pete. My name is Tiffany. Just who is Pete, Tiffany? He doesn't want to talk right now. I have poured my dog a bowl of cereal instead of giving her food multiple times. Everything is food when you're a dog. Can confirm, as a dog, your shoes are delicious. Instead of ground coffee, I put a couple of scoops of sugar in my coffee filter and brewed it. I once poured the fresh grounds into the basket before placing the filter in. Upon realizing my mistake, I emptied and cleaned the basket and then placed the filter in its rightful place. Then I poured the water and hit brew. 15 minutes later, I had a full pot of hot water. Not a good morning. Grabbing my keys, phone, wallet, etc. before work. Why is there a TV remote in my car? The etc. included the TV remote. I have done this. Instead of grabbing my coffee, I got my TV remote and didn't notice until I got to work. Damn, that's even worse, since you left something behind to take the essential remote with you. I used to work in a call center and would answer my personal phone with my call center speech. I had to go to Walmart once after finishing my midnight cashier shift from a competing grocery retailer across the street. I absent-mindedly grabbed my stuff, approached the cashier, and asked her if she found everything okay. We stared at each other blankly for a little bit. I worked as a greeter at a store that isn't Walmart. One day, I was thinking about how I had to go to Walmart after work and greeted people with "Welcome to Walmart" several times. I used to work at the airport while in college, and one day I went to get groceries and drove 30 minutes to the airport instead. What did you used to do at the airport? I think airports are interesting. He was an autopilot. Someone knocked at my door, and I knocked back. I worked at a restaurant where we had to knock on the bar door before opening it. I probably did it about 20 times a day for 6 years. Almost every time I open a door that you have to push open, like a bathroom door at a restaurant or something, I knock really hard, like 3 times. Lots of weird looks. Had a pet rat out roaming with me while I made some toast. Cleaned up, put the rat in the fridge, and didn't realize until I put the butter in the cage that, oh crap, went to reclaim the rat and she was all, "The food box is mine now!" Already gotten into the ham. That was the best day of that rat's life. Probably the time I cracked 3 eggs into the sink, one after another, or not putting a bowl under the colander when straining the chicken broth. Well, that was a good use of my time, stares forlornly at browned chicken bones. Opening a mozzarella cheese stick for my daughter, threw away the actual cheese stick and gave her the wrapper. This is all you get. Raising my hand to voice my opinion while in a conversation not at school. I once did this in a Skype conversation. Skype meetings are the worst about this because you don't have any body language to clue you in that someone wants to say something. So usually 1 or 2 people just steamroll the conversation, and you basically have to talk over them for 30 seconds to get them to stop and give you some time. It's honestly a real problem with conference calls in my experience. I cared for a horse for several years. First thing in the morning, I would go put feed and water in the field, lead her out, and close the fence behind her. One morning, as I'm walking back into my house, I hear a weird sound behind me, the sound of hooves on linoleum. She looked as surprised as I that I had brought her into my kitchen. Luckily, she never told anyone, so my secret is still safe. You can lead a horse to your kitchen. Yeah, all she did was produce some apples. Put my phone in the fridge to charge. Makes sense. It's faster if you do it in the microwave. Was at my fiance's house for dinner. Had to leave early. Was in a rush. Kissed her dad on the way out. Ah, crap, something similar happened to me. I got to a party and saw people I knew, mostly female. So I gave them all a hug and a small peck on the cheek. Get to the one guy in the group, both of us bearded men, and proceeded to give him a peck on the cheek. We both just stopped and stared at each other. Most of my friends would probably just roll with it. I grabbed my lunch on the way out the door for work in the morning. I kept wondering what that beeping noise was the whole drive there. Couldn't figure it out. Got to work and grabbed my lunch, only to realize I'd actually grabbed the baby monitor. Imagine you pick up someone else's signal with the baby monitor and start hearing voices in your car. Imagine you drive past an abandoned house with it and hear Russian agents plotting to assassinate the president using baby monitors instead of handheld radios. Put the dinner on and realized I had no carrots. Decided to drive to the shop to get carrots. Ended up driving to work. Burnt the crap out of all the pots and had to buy new ones. Cleaning up my face with an electric clipper, thought, oh, missed a spot, and proceeded to shave off my eyebrow. Lose my phone in my hand while in the middle of a call. It's better than looking for your glasses while you're wearing them. Not my proudest moment. Not as bad as not being able to find your glasses because you can't see without your glasses. I tried to put a pacifier in my mother's mouth as opposed to the infant she was holding. The best part is that she was nagging the hell out of me. Once I was feeding my 1-year-old a banana and talking to my mom. In the middle of the conversation, I pushed the banana in front of my mom's face and just waited for her to take a bite. It took like 30 seconds to register that I was force-feeding my 48-year-old mother, not my toddler. It was hilarious. I wear a fob watch at work, pinned to my chest. On my days off, I get odd looks if someone asks me the time and I automatically start pawing at my boob. When my daughter was very young, she loved trains. So I'd take her on short trips in the line past some fields, where I'd point out at the animals to her. Got some weird British alarmed looks that time I pointed out the window and loudly said, "Look, moo cows," when I was on the train by myself. As most males are undoubtedly aware, men's restrooms usually have a fairly standard design. There's a row of sinks, followed by a row of urinals, and then finally a handful of stalls. The accepted etiquette for the men's room is nigh on universal, but for those who might not know, and there seem to be a fair number of you, it can be described as such. 1. Enter the restroom. 2. If there is a urinal available and the ones next to it are not in use, approach and do your business. 3. If there is a urinal available and the ones next to it are in use, find another urinal. 4. If no other urinals are available, save for ones with adjacent users, approach, stare straight ahead, and finish as quickly as possible. 5. If there are no urinals available, use a stall. Be sure to close and lock the door. 6. If there are no urinals or stalls available, stand behind a urinal, keeping as much distance between you and the current occupant as possible, and pretend to be very interested in either the floor or the ceiling. These rules are in place for the specific purpose of minimizing embarrassment, and they work well if everyone follows them. Unfortunately, while in a caffeine-deprived haze, I managed to accidentally exploit an unfortunate loophole. I had walked into the restroom, intent on, well, you can guess, and discovered that none of the urinals were available. Fortunately, one of the stall doors was ajar, indicating that it was unoccupied, or so I thought. Upon entering the stall in question, I discovered that it was already in use by someone who had neglected to close the door, and who was midway through their expulsion of fluids. Had I been in a sounder state of mind, I would have hurriedly exited and waited for a different section of the facility to become available. As it happened, I decided that the best course of action was to lounge against the wall, still inside of the stall, mind you, and twiddle with my phone until the guy finished his performance. It was only as he was nearing completion that I realized what I was doing and rushed to exit the stall before my unwitting co-occupant noticed my presence. Of course, that was right when someone else entered the restroom. They saw me leave the stall, assumed that it was empty, and walked forward right into the original occupant, who was making his own exit. I decided to hold it in for a while after that. I think you have number 4 and number 5 backwards. Depends on if there are dividers between the urinals. I have 2. 1. Walking to work on a very straight path through a nature reserve, I fell asleep and sleepwalked for about 10 minutes. It was so weird, I blinked and suddenly appeared near the end of my journey. 2. Got into my car with coffee and a newspaper, carefully held the rolled newspaper whilst hurling the coffee onto the passenger seat. At the end of an evening scout meeting, we were playing sharks and minnows across the grass when this one kid runs to the end, tripped, and hit his head on the sidewalk at the end of the field. We help him up and ask if he's okay. He insists that he's fine. His injury ends the game, so we all head back into the auditorium to close the meeting. After a solid 5 minutes of announcements and flags, we're sitting and chatting on the edge of the stage. The kid who fell suddenly looks at me with a really confused look on his face. He had been functioning fairly normally, yet he had no recollection of the past 10 minutes, from the moment he hit his head until then. That freaked me out. In high school, I was home by myself rehearsing an imaginary conversation with a boy that I had a crush on. I poured imaginary him a real glass of orange juice. Once while playing an intense board game, I was concentrating so hard that my buddy realized that he could just hand random things to me and I'd take them and put them in my jacket pocket or place them on the table in front of me. I only realized when I ran out of space to put things. The other day, I was checking in at an amusement park. After the guy scanned my ticket, I, for some unknown reason, held out my hand and the guy handed me his scanner. I knew none of those people were paid. They all just pass on the torch. Post-duty ER was already home and asleep. Mom woke me up for dinner saying, "Food's gonna get cold." Thought I heard code, so I jumped up and shouted, "Where?" and ran down to the dining area only to realize I was at home. Poor food. Why didn't you help it? Please forgive me. I sleepwalk once in a while. Recently I got up at 2 a.m. and fed the dog. My girlfriend woke up and was like, "WTF, did you just feed the dog? What time is it?" Apparently I looked her in the eye and said, "Everyone loves a midnight snack. He's a good dog, Brent." I got out of work late, drove home, must have dozed off because the last thing I remembered was being on the freeway a couple of exits from home. Woke up in the garage 10 minutes later with the car turned off. I got home safely without causing an accident. Scared me still thinking about it. Most people are kidding when they tell Jesus to take the wheel. Woke up 3 hours early for some reason and didn't check the clock, but thought I was running late. Rushed through getting ready for work and hit the road. Think it's a bit darker than usual, but it could just be gray clouds before the rain. The roads are a bit emptier than I'm expecting. Must be lucky today. Finally pull up to work and start opening up the shop before anyone else gets in. Look over at the clock and realize I still have 2 hours to go before I even wake up. Almost went home, but decided to stay and just take off 3 hours earlier than normal. I did this. I was in high school and thought I heard my alarm go off, so I got up and got in the shower. Normally, my mom helped me make my lunch and get breakfast ready. We did everything at the same time, so I was kind of mad that she wasn't there. Got dressed, packed my lunch, ate breakfast, and went to tell my mom goodbye. As I walked into her room, my backpack on and my car keys in hand, I saw her clock, 3:43 a.m. I think this is a joke. Her clock is wrong. Check my watch that I put on but somehow never looked at. 3:43 a.m. Say screw this and go back to bed. Find out when I woke up at the right time that all I had put in my lunch was a banana and a packet of tea, and for breakfast I had cereal with orange juice poured in. I knew this because half of it was still in the freezer. Not a good morning for me. Worst part? I didn't even use an alarm clock. My mom woke me up. Don't know what I was on that morning. Patted one of my coworkers on the butt. I was in the habit of walking up behind my husband and patting him on the butt, so it was just automatic. Fortunately, the coworker wasn't offended. I've done that. I was walking through town with my girlfriend at the time, looking at stalls and shops, and she was in my periphery, or so I thought. She had stopped to look at something else, and a woman of roughly the same height and hair color was standing next to me. I checked my phone for the time, gently caressed her shoulder and said, "Come on now, it's time for us to head off," and just walked away from this woman. I turned around a few meters later to see my girlfriend, a luminescent shade of embarrassed, and this entirely freaked out old Asian woman. I would be flattered personally if I were old and some young thing accidentally carted me off, but maybe that's just me. When you're old, it's always nice to have something random happen like that, as long as you're not being abducted. I filled my car with gas and when I got home realized that I had not paid. I went back to the station and told the clerk what I had done. She thought she was missing a payment, but the station was really busy at the time, so she wasn't exactly sure. I paid for my stolen gas and went about my way. I also walked into the convenience store next to my work, grabbed a Gatorade out of the cooler, and walked out the door. I realized what I did when I got back to work. Went back and paid for that too. I once paid for the gas and then drove off without pumping it. My old girlfriend's mom used to pay for fast food in a drive-thru and then drive away. I woke up one morning in college, got dressed, left my room, and got halfway out the dorm before I realized I had no pants on. I did something like that when I was 8. My dad was in the car getting ready to take me and my brother to the game room, and I didn't want to miss out, so I ran to the car without pants on. Then I hear my mom yelling out the window, "You have no pants on!" When I was sick and feeling feverish, I decided to take some Motrin to try and alleviate the symptoms. Usually, I grab the pill bottle and shake out 2 pills, but instead I grabbed the water bottle first and poured water all over my hand. Fever is your body's way of fighting whatever germs off. For adults, if your fever is between 99 and 105.5 degrees Fahrenheit, try not to take anything to bring the fever down. If the fever goes above 101.5, then take something. I feed my cat while I make breakfast. One very sleep-deprived morning, I made cereal in her bowl and put her kibble in my cereal bowl. I didn't realize I screwed up until I shoved a giant spoonful of cat food in my mouth and chewed a few times. So, how did it taste? Like old beef jerky flavored sand? Was really tired but too hungry to sleep once. Went downstairs to make a PB&J. Once I was done, I put the knife in the fridge and held the peanut butter under the sink faucet for a good minute trying to process why something was wrong. Wait, do you refrigerate your PB? It depends on the peanut butter. The common stuff usually can just go in the pantry. The organic or all-natural stuff or whatever usually requires refrigeration. Spoon into the trash and yogurt cup into the sink, then face-palming when I heard the wrong sound, the plastic cup instead of the metal spoon. I'm a security guard for Amazon, and I have to do bathroom checks. Caught myself yelling, "Security!" right before going into the restroom at a bar on my day off. Thank God it was empty. On a similar note, I did park maintenance for a while and often entered the opposite sex bathroom to clean. I have found myself yelling, "Female maintenance worker!" before entering the ladies' room. When I was in school, 6th grade I think, my mom would make a bagged lunch. She would wrap soda cans with aluminum foil so they would stay cold. Pretty sure that doesn't work. One day, I unwrapped my soda and discovered that she packed me a beer that day. What did you do with the beer, and why is the answer that you chugged it? Had I been a year or two older, I probably would have drank it. I gave it to the lunchroom teacher who has known my mom for years. I used to fall asleep in class quite often, and normally my writing would trail off into something illegible, and then I'd be out for the count for 10 to 15 minutes. One time, I woke up after an in-class power nap to find that my writing had trailed off, and then I'd written, "my son," as clear as anything at the end of the sentence. I was 13 to 14 at the time and didn't have any children. This brings back memories of sleep-deprived days in class. My social studies teacher always had a Bluetooth speaker with him, and if someone fell asleep in class, he would put it right against their ear and blast death metal. Most of his victims woke up and fell out of their chairs. Ah, the good old days. Was in a class where this guy would always fall asleep. One day, the teacher decided to have everyone quietly leave the room. He changed the 2 clocks in the room to 4 p.m. School let out at 2:30 or so, turned off the room lights and hallway lights, and then on his way out of the room, he closed the door just loud enough to wake the kid up. The kid came bolting out of the room to a hall full of students laughing. Good times. Thanks for watching until the end. What are some dumb things you did while on autopilot? Please let us know in the comments below. Then be sure to like this video, subscribe if you haven't, and hit the notification bell so that you know when our next video is available. For more videos just like this one, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.